Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to the city of Huntsville in 1986 for me to be a youth and family minister. I have been a minister since 1980. I have served in this community as a police chaplain assigned to a SWAT team since 1992, and I've been in private practice as a licensed professional counselor since 1998. I'm also an adventure educator and an avid outdoorsman. I dabble in rock climbing and I goof around with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Our life has been full of many wonderful experiences and some just outright adventures. I used to write about those things in a little church bulletin article. So now instead of asking you to read those things, we're just going to talk about them in our podcast. And as we talk about them, we're going to talk about the facts. The facts lead to concepts, and the concepts lead to application. One caveat about the facts is, for the most part, we're going to tell you the facts just as they happened. But every now and then, we're going to tell you the way other people have told us they remember it happening with a little bit of embellishment. It's all good, clean fun and for educational purposes. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy Keeping Up with Jones. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by SJ&L General Contractors. They are licensed in both Alabama and Tennessee, and they provide services such as mass grading, storm drainage, sewer and concrete improvement, asphalt paving, erosion control, demolition, and heavy hauling. If you need any of these services, contact them 931-433-4660, 931-433-4660. Also, they are in need of heavy equipment operators, concrete finishers, CDL dump truck drivers, and pipe layers. If you're interested in employment with this family-owned business, you can go to the website www.sjnl.com. That's www.sjnl.com. He gathered his men and in a conversational tone said, "I'm going to be gone for a few weeks, and I'll probably end up in jail. I'm going to go get my daughter." And he turned and he walked out into the rain. Every man standing there, with the exception of me, was an operator, combat veteran, Army Ranger, or men who had been involved in actual gunfire as part of a SWAT team. And even though they were battle experienced or violence experienced men, they were all a little shocked. I have come to associate that calm, resolute demeanor with men who are truly dangerous. Now, I don't consider myself to be a dangerous person. But I want to tell you a couple of stories, and they're not good stories. They reflect something dark in my character. But they are proof of concept, so that when I tell you the real story today, you'll understand a little bit about the way I might have been wired. And I don't remember considering that this guy was bigger than me or older than me as a factor. Why is the rabbit not afraid of the bear? The rabbit is smarter. I was shorter on skates, and I was much shorter without skates. And he was taller on skates, much taller. But he had no stability. And there was no way to mount an offense with wheels on his feet. I was a terrible skater and he was not. And so every time he came around the rink and came up behind me, he clipped to the back of my skates and I fell down. I'm not a graceful person anyway. I'm much less graceful falling, and I'm much, much less grateful falling on a pair of skates. And I went to the counter and I took my skates off and I put my tennis shoes on. And then I walked around the carpet and stood in the far back corner underneath the black light. And when he came around the corner that time, I stepped out onto the hardwood skating rink floor and met him with my best version of a Stan Hansen lariat. Think clothesline, but your elbows bent and you're swinging it forward. I caught him just below the chest. I wasn't tall enough to reach his throat. He went down. He went down hard. And he didn't want to fight on skates. But he knew that if he started unlacing them, that I would know that a fight was going to ensue and that I would beat him like a rented Baptist mule. He chose not to fight. And I didn't get tripped anymore. Maybe that's when I learned the concept: when my behavior costs me more than it costs you, I'll reevaluate my behavior. There's nothing to do to make this guy be nice. There's nothing to make this guy not be a bully. But I had just ensured that he was not going to bully me. And maybe there's no lasting consequences and no great deep lesson from a scuffle between two boys at a skating rink. But I really have thought about it often. As I've matured, I've thought about it more seriously. Was he trying to be mean? Was he trying to be cool? Was he trying to impress someone? And does it matter? Knowing what I know now, it could be as simple as him being a dumb kid. And knowing what I know now, it could be as complicated as he had been bullied. After all, people who have been hurt tend to hurt people without provocation. I don't know that knowing any of that would have factored into my actions or changed what I did. I was just an easy target at 4 foot 11 inches tall, I guess. There was another instance, and this one's a little more serious. This guy was a phenom. He was a monster. He was an anomaly on the quote unquote evolutionary scale. I mean, he was a serious physical specimen, way more than twice the size of probably anybody else at the school, including most of the guys who played ball. I was in the 8th grade, and the 8th grade was attached to the high school. So, at the pep rally, it would be the seniors, the juniors, the sophomore, the freshman, and the 8th grade. So, yeah, we were the little tiny fish on the food chain. And as tiny of a little fish as I was, this guy, the size of a great white shark, found me every day and did something to me. Now, I was never, ever really seriously hurt, but I got tired of it. And I had an episode of calm resoluteness. I took a glass Coke bottle and I wrapped it in a washcloth and I beat it with a hammer until it became a fine powder. And I transferred that powder into some cellophane and I made myself a little ninja bomb. And I went to school on Monday morning with the full intent that if this guy found me and picked on me that day at lunch, there was going to be a confrontation and an altercation. And I recognized that the potential for me to be very seriously hurt existed. Had this guy picked me up over his head and dropped me, it would have probably killed me, and he well possessed the ability to do this. not just the mean streak, but the actual physical prowess to accomplish it. I sat outside the home ec room on a set of steps. The home ec room would have been the right side of the corridor. The retaining wall that the steps led to the top of would have been the left side, and I would have had him boxed in a fatal funnel. I set 5 steps up, opened my sandwich, and had behind my back my little ninja bomb of powder. And sure enough, Godzilla showed up and began to breathe fire in my direction. This time, instead of avoiding him or trying to escape, I smarted off and I accelerated the situation. As he began to step toward me, I knew I had the high ground. I was eye level with him, and I put my hand behind my back and grabbed my glass powder. Now, whether he beat me to death or whether he just beat me up for the rest of his life, he was going to look in a mirror and go, hey, this is what it cost me to hurt that little boy. And he was never going to hurt me again. As I stood, my brother and some of his friends came around and, reading the body language, intervened, and I didn't end up permanently blinding someone and didn't end up going to the hospital. But as a little boy, 4 foot 11 inches tall in the 8th grade, I possessed a capacity to premeditate violence on another person. Remington Steele was our first little dog as a family, and he was a cloud white miniature poodle. I bought him for Jackie for about 1/4 of my monthly income when we were young students at Harding and had just been married. I put a red ribbon on his neck, and she found him in the student center, or he found her, and it became her true love. Oh, my memories of her and that little dog just warm my heart. She would bathe him, sit in the floor and brush him. I've got a picture of her in our little house in Salem, Arkansas, and she's in gray sweatpants, and she's sitting on the floor, and her hair is wet. It had just been permed, and this little dog looks like he's just been permed, and he's wet, and he's sitting there between her knees, and the picture is adorable. It's a little girl pretending to be a princess with her poodle. Now, she was 19 years old and married, but in that picture, she's just a charming little girl playing house. Her dog was her constant companion. She had a little orange backpack, orange and brown, and she could open the backpack and Remington would jump in it. She put that backpack on and ride a bike, and he was in it. I've got a picture of her somewhere, and she's coming down a cliff, and she's wearing this little backpack, and out of that little backpack sticking that little fluffy head and those little ears. If she went, Remington would go with her. You could tickle her or tease her, and she would say, Remington, help me, and he would get between you and her and bark his little bark. He didn't know he weighed 7 pounds. He was just in love with Jackie, and Jackie was in love with him. We were preparing to go to summer camp. It was in July. I think Jackie's mom and dad and brother were visiting at our house before we left for camp. And I came in from work early because we were leaving for camp, so I didn't have to work the whole day. We were going to go the next couple of days. I came in on that hot July day, and Jackie said, hey, something bit Remington in the yard, and he's hurt. I didn't even change clothes. I went into the bedroom and reached under the bed and pulled him out, and sure enough, on his little thigh, there was this wound. Well, things that bite make 2 holes. This was one. And I said, honey, I don't think he's been bit. I think somebody shot him with a pellet gun. Well, we took him to a little veterinary clinic on South Parkway. And she x-rayed the little dog, and sure enough, there was that perfect outline of the 177 caliber pellet that somebody had popped him in the thigh with. The doctor said, hey, we'll take that out. We'll keep him overnight. And you come get him in the morning. And that's what we did. I drove down to South Parkway the next morning, and the little veterinarian met me. And her little assistant was there, and they were both crying. And she said that during the night, Remington had died. Poodles don't have a strong constitution, and I don't know if it was the trauma of the pellet or the trauma of the surgery, but they put him in that cold kennel that night, and I don't know if he died in pain, and I don't know if he died afraid. Maybe he just went to sleep and didn't wake up, but I know he died alone. And I wrapped him in a little towel, and I took him home. And I walked in the door with this little dead dog that somebody had maybe not even maliciously shot with a pellet gun. And I had to tell my wife, your little dog is dead. And she began to cry. And she's not a demonstrative person. She doesn't make a big deal out of things. So her crying is silent. And I had never seen tears in those blue eyes. And there I stood holding her little dog in a towel and watching her cry. And it was her birthday. I can't tell you the feelings that were inside me. I've never hurt my wife. And I was not going to allow anyone else to hurt her. I called my dad. And in calm resoluteness, I said, Dad, you're probably going to have to come get me out of jail. Because I'm going to go to this dude's house and I'm going to take that pellet gun. And I'm going to bend it around his neck. And I'm going to hurt him. And my dad, who's not a minister, he's not a counselor, and he doesn't have a master's degree, and he doesn't have a college degree. He has a degree in life, in Christianity, in wisdom. And my dad, in that calm voice of his, said, well, you do what you need to do to feel like a man. But you were a Christian way before you ever owned that dog. And the fire went out. And my calm, resolute plan for violence turned to calm, resolute repentance. And I walked out into the backyard with a shovel, and I buried the little dog beneath the oak tree that I rappel out of. And I stood there for a long time staring out over the bean field, letting the wind blow. That neighbor and I would become friends. He lived with a lady. They weren't dating. They were just roommates. She got cancer. I ended up being privileged to baptize her. I ran at night in those days. We lived in a little neighborhood that had good street lights, and I could run out of Stacy Circle and turn left on Doug Hill Road, and then end up running up to the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit sign on the top of the hill right there. It's Highway 72. And I'd come back in close to midnight on a jog, and he would be sitting on the porch. And I would go sit beside him because his friend, his roommate, was dying. And we talked. Sometimes about important things and sometimes about nothing at all. He asked me that when his roommate died, if I would officiate at their funeral. And I did. And after she died, I came in one night from a run. He was on the porch, and I walked over and sat down. And I don't even remember what we were talking about, but the night got really, really quiet, and you could hear the cicadas and the crickets. And in a very low voice, he said, "It was very unfortunate what happened to your wife's little dog." I said, "Yes, sir. It was very unfortunate what happened to my wife's little dog. But dogs aren't as important as people. Thank you." I I don't tell you that to make myself a hero or a bad guy or a smart guy or anything else. I just know that when we have these calm, resolute moments and we decide that we're going to take a course of action, that we've been hurt or offended, and that we have a right to do something, whether it's deal with a bully at a skating rink or plan to take a course of action to keep somebody from picking on you, or whether we've convinced ourselves that it's okay to seek vengeance or retribution. I'm reminded of the words of my dad that whatever it is you've convinced yourself you've got to do, you were probably a Christian before this situation occurred. And just because we have a right to do something does not make it right to do. There are 32 miles of cave passages in Cumberland Cavern. 333 feet underground is the Volcano Room. The Volcano Room is the site for the youth rally known as Erupt. It's an underground youth rally. It's an annual event. It takes place in October. The next Erupt is scheduled for October of 2021. Erupt is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. If you'd like more information, you may contact them at eruptyouthRally@gmail.com. That's eruptyouthRally@gmail.com. Or check out their website for more information, 3 W's and a dot, eruptyouthRally.com, www.eruptyouthRally.com.